The news cycle, it never ends. It just keeps on going and going and going. It's like the Energizer Bunny. You ever seen those Duracell commercials, or is he with Energizer? I just said Energizer. I answered my own question. What's going on with me? I'm a lunatic. Ow. But you ever seen that commercial back in the 80s or the early 90s where you have the Energizer Bunny and he's just like... You guys ever seen that commercial? I did. Maybe you're too young. I don't know. Maybe you're swimming in your dad's ball sack and you just can't remember anything. But I do. And that's how the news cycle goes to professional wrestling. It never stops. Jade Cargill has now been released from AEW. Well, I don't want to say released. That's probably not the correct terminology. Her contract expired. So technically speaking, I guess she left. I guess you could say that. She wasn't fired. You can't necessarily say that she quit. She did her duties. I guess she just left. That's just the best way to explain it. Which is kind of confusing because I swear, I mean, I don't keep up with Rampage, but didn't she like have a title match with Chris Statlander? I guess that was just what part of her, I don't know if I want to say it was part of her contract duties to maybe fulfill her match requirements. I'm gonna assume that was the problem. And maybe she just did it because she just wanted to, you know, put over Chris Statlander and just do the job and, you know, just traditionally what professional wrestlers do. But that's not all. Apparently, she's scheduled to go to the Performance Center up in Orlando, which is crazy when you think about it because, again, she was just on Rampage. And it goes to show you how WWE views AEW talent for the most part, right? Like, I'm not saying they would do something like that to, like, a Kenny Omega, for an example, or maybe even the Young Bucks. I think they actually offer them contracts to perform directly on the main roster, right? I could be mistaken, but I think that's what they were offered, to just go directly to the main roster, perform there, and have like an out on their contract. At least the Young Bucks did, at least. But Jade Cargill, yeah, she left AEW. She's no longer working for the company, and it's been talked about that she's going directly to the Performance Center. Now, personally, I'm not a big fan of Jade Cargill in the sense that I worship the ground that she walks on. I mean, it's not to say that I wouldn't do her. Totally would do her. Absolutely. I'm a man on any end of the day. But at the same time, though, I never hated her. She was one of the few women, at least in the company, that had a personality, that actually had charisma. I mean, outside of maybe Britt Baker, I can't think of anyone else in that division that has personality. I mean, yeah, you have people who are trying to find their footing right now. I mean, I always thought Paige was a charisma vacuum, so please don't insert her. But people like Toni Storm, for an example, they're trying to find a gimmick right now, and that's pretty cool for the most part. But all the other women, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, they all suck from a character. I mean, they suck in general. I mean, they're terrible wrestlers too. Terrible. God damn, they're terrible. So it is kind of cool to see someone of that stature, of that quality of character, actually come to WWE and actually interject some life into the division for the most part. I mean, I know people kind of fantasize book with Jade Cargill. I know some people want to see her versus Charlotte Flair because they have a similar body type as far as, you know, how tall and lanky they are for the most part. I know people talked about wanting to see her versus Bianca Belair because, I don't know, they're black. I can't think of any reason to want to say. I mean, well, no, I could say they're both like really, really fit also, but I mean, like Jade Cargill has more of like, you know, a powerlifting type of deal, whereas like, you know, Bianca Belair is more like an athlete. I mean, it's not to say Jade Cargill is an athlete. I think she's a former basketball player, but you get what I'm trying to say here, right? So I'm actually kind of, I wouldn't say hyped because, again, I don't necessarily care for the women all too much. That includes Jade Cargill. But if I had to make like a little bit of a priority list at the very least, I would say that Jade Cargill's up there in regards to like women that like I like or I care to see, or, oh, okay, well, if I have to be forced to watch the women wrestle, I guess it would be someone like a Jade Cargill. And I don't mean wrestle in the sense of just wrestling in the ring. When I say wrestling, I kind of generalize. I mean cutting promos, I mean actually being backstage, I mean actually coming out in the ring entrance, all the 9 yards. I use an compass to talk about my professional wrestling. I'm not just some nerd who says wrestling. I strictly focus on the in-ring portion because apparently I like to just, you know, take one aspect and then apply it to everything and say, well, that's what professional wrestling really is, when it's not, you dork. I hate you, and your mom gave birth for you to the wrong reasons. Tissue should have been involved in that process, in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there also. The question is, when Jade Cargill comes in, we could talk about all the fantasy bookings in regards to Bianca Belair, Charlotte, as I just touched on before. Hell, and maybe even Rhea Ripley. If anything, Rhea can carry it to a really, really good match. Not to say or imply that Bianca or Charlotte couldn't do it either, but Rhea Ripley's a better wrestler out of all three of them. You know, those are matches that seem really cool and plausible. And it's not to say that she's going to the Performance Center like some straight up rookie. I mean, she's still green, but it's not as if she's not one step ahead people who are probably brand spanking new at the Performance Center. But at the same time, though, people who are coming to the Performance Center also people who are from the indies also, who are really, really good wrestlers. They're just trying to, you know, accustom themselves to the WWE landscape as far as the PC Center is concerned, right? So all that is great. That's awesome. But it's the booking that I'm more so concerned about. Like, on one hand, I feel like WWE does such a tremendous, at least brutally. It's not even a comparison. You cannot even remotely compare how AEW treats their women compared to WWE treats their women. It's night and day. WWE actually, it's not even just WWE treating their women right. They have actual stars. I mean, like, not household, I want to go that far, but names in their women divisions. You know, like I will outright say that they have like Becky, Charlotte. One may even argue someone like a Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair. I would say those four alone are probably, now that CM Punk is gone, maybe outside of someone like a Daniel Bryan or a Chris Jericho or a John Moxley, I would say maybe, and you can maybe, and I wouldn't even say that. Honestly, take Jericho, John Moxley, and Bryan Danielson and put them to the side. I think, honestly, a Charlotte Flair, Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, and especially a Becky Lynch, I think they have more star power than a Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. The Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, they specifically, and it's not to say that they're not known by even casual WWE fans, I'm not saying that, but I will say as far as name power is considered, as far as status is considered, as far as marketability is considered, a Charlotte Flair and a Becky Lynch, and at this point I will even argue a Rhea Ripley and a Bianca Belair, have about as much name value as a Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. They're not up there with a Moxley or especially a Jericho or a Bryan or a Danielson, but I will put them, if not on par, maybe even a step up. Becky Lynch has more star power than a Kenny Omega and Young Bucks. And I'm not a Becky Lynch fan at all, but that's just facts. Like, statistically speaking, that's just facts. That's how WWE treats their women. So there's a part of me that believes that they would do a lot of wonders with a Jade Cargill compared to what AEW has done with a Jade Cargill. But it's not to say that I'm still not somewhat worried to a certain degree, because I would presume that Jade Cargill will have to go to NXT first, right? And it's not the fact that, like, she wouldn't do anything in NXT as much as how much would she linger in NXT. You get what I'm saying? With a Jade Cargill, I feel as if, like, she just has to get the fundamentals from the WWE aspect and she'd be okay. She was never what I would consider a terrible wrestler. She's definitely gotten better compared to where she was back in early 2021 with the whole Shaq stuff and Cody Rhodes. She has gotten leaps and bounds better compared to what she was at that time. And she's working with women who are actually good. Like, let's take that into context too. You're not working with the likes of a Sky Blue, for an example. You're not working with the likes of a, you know, Botch Baker, for an example. You're not working with those women. You're working with competent superstars. You're working with a Bianca Belair, who's actually very, very good. You know, you're working with a Charlotte Flair. Say whatever you want to say about Charlotte Flair. She's a good wrestler. You know, you're working with a Bayley, who's fundamentally one of the best women wrestlers in the world today. Those are the women that you're working with. And yeah, granted in NXT, you're going to be working with people who are probably on par with your level for the most part. But eventually, you're going to have to go to the WWE main roster. And I just don't want her sitting there and just kind of meandering inside the NXT roster for too long. Because in the end of the day, if you really want to be, you know, a little bit straightforward with it, compared to all the women on NXT, because there are more eyeballs on Dynamite than there is on NXT, right? So one can say theoretically, on that roster, she's probably the biggest name on that roster once she goes to NXT. Like, let's just be factual about this. She'll be the biggest name on the NXT roster just by default, because she was a former champion on AEW television and one of the more prominent women on that brand. I just don't want her, again, meandering in the NXT roster. If they're gonna get her, make use of her. Put her in the compelling feuds. Put her, because she has something to give, you know, and time is going to tell in regards to her promo ability also, because I know, like most of the AEW wrestlers, especially ones who can't cut promos like her or Jungle Boy, for an example, where they have to rely on the cursing. Not that I don't mind cursing. I mean, God, I'm a sailor mouth myself, but, you know, when we're talking about professional wrestling, you just can't go out on WWE television and say the same stuff, like, and have the same barriers put on you in regards to what you can or cannot get away with on the AEW television. You know what I'm saying? So I am kind of worried about her promos to a certain degree also, but I guess that's what the Performance Center is all about also. I feel as though she has natural charisma and she could be that person. She could be, because she is young also. She's not that old. I think we're like this. I think I'm actually, if I'm not older than Jade Cargill, actually no, I think we were born the same year. I think I think she was born in 92 if I'm not mistaken. I think she has me by like a good month or two. So we're like the same age, believe it or not. I know, right? She looks so beautiful, and you look at me and I'm like way more prettier than Jade Cargill. I mean, look at me. I'm way more prettier than Jade Cargill. But yeah, I just had to talk about this because it's like, yeah, her contract expired. That's kind of big when you actually think about it, as far as like people who are fans of women pro wrestling and just pro wrestling in general. Not to mention, you don't really hear too many wrestlers that big of a name for the most part. I'm not saying she's a huge name, but relatively speaking, that big of a name that AEW just lets go all willy-nilly. So, you know, it's interesting to see where she's going to go from here. I wish her the best. Again, I'm rooting for her because, again, I wouldn't say that I'm a world biggest fan because I'm not, but I like Jade Cargill, and I feel behind the WWE machine and people who are competent workers and trainers who know what the hell they're actually doing, and there's not marks telling you to hit 450s in the ring in order to get over. She has a lot to give, and, you know, again, she's 30 years old. I would like to see, or actually, I think she's 31 right now because we're the same age. I would like to see where she's at when she's around like 34, 35 years old. You know, she has kids already. I think she has 8 kids. So, you know, I don't really venture to say. I mean, I'm not in her personal life, so I don't know if she's going to have more kids. I mean, it seems like the women nowadays are just popping out kids left and right. But I would like to see where she goes from here, and wish her luck in her future endeavors. Pow, pow, pow. But as always, that's going to do it for this video. I can't do the whole millennial mark stuff still. Still trying to think of an outro. So for now, I'll just go with my prominent more outro. Deuces. Peace.